Let's get right into it. Number 6. The government is poisoning the booze. If you're a fan of conspiracy theories, you probably love the idea of the government hiding aliens in the desert or faking moon landings. But usually, these theories fall apart because they require the government to be competent. However, during Prohibition in the 1920s, the U.S. government decided that if people wouldn't stop drinking, they'd just make the alcohol lethal. This isn't a "my cousin's roommate told me" story, it's a historical fact. Frustrated that Americans were still getting hammered on industrial alcohol, which bootleggers would clean to make drinkable, the Treasury Department ordered manufacturers to add much deadlier chemicals to their products. We're talking about kerosene, brucine, and most notably, wood alcohol methanol. The goal was to scare people into sobriety. Instead, people just kept drinking the tainted hooch and dying by the thousands. By the time Prohibition ended, it's estimated that the federal denaturing program had killed around 10,000 people. Your high school history book probably skipped the chapter where Uncle Sam acted like a disgruntled chemist trying to thin the herd. It's the ultimate, "I'm doing this for your own good" move, except the good involves your optic nerves shriveling up and your liver resigning in protest. Essentially, the government took the concept of a hangover and decided to make it permanent. Number 5. The CIA is reading your mind. Imagine being a college student back in the 1950s, looking for some extra cash. You see a flyer for a psychological study at a prestigious university like Harvard or Stanford. You figure you'll answer some questions, maybe look at some ink blots, and get enough money for a nice steak dinner. Instead, you end up locked in a room where a man in a lab coat feeds you massive doses of LSD and screams at you for 12 hours to see if he can shatter your personality and rebuild it as a loyal sleeper agent. This was Project MKUltra, and for decades, it was dismissed as the peak of tinfoil hat paranoia, but it was very, very real. The CIA spent millions of dollars investigating mind control techniques, using everything from sensory deprivation to electroshock therapy on unwitting subjects. They weren't just trying to read minds, they were trying to reprogram them like a glitchy Commodore 64. One of the most famous victims was Ted Kaczynski, who participated in these experiments at Harvard before eventually becoming the Unabomber. While the CIA didn't exactly succeed in creating a fleet of Manchurian candidates, they did succeed in proving that the people in charge are often much weirder and more dangerous than the villains in a Bond movie. Your paranoid uncle was right all along. The only thing he got wrong was thinking that a hat made of kitchen foil would stop a government-funded acid trip. Number 4. The green wallpaper of death. Victorian England was a vibe. It was all about top hats, repressed emotions, and a very specific shade of vibrant, Scheele's green wallpaper. At the time, if you were a social climber with a parlor to decorate, you absolutely had to have this pigment. It was lush, it was trendy, and it was also made of copper arsenite. Yes, the arsenite part stands for arsenic. For years, people whispered that their houses were trying to kill them. Families would move into a newly decorated home and suddenly develop headaches, skin lesions, and a pesky habit of dying. Doctors blamed bad vapors or hysteria, while the wallpaper industry insisted their product was as safe as a warm crumpet. Eventually, the myth was confirmed. The damp British air was reacting with the wallpaper paste to create trimethylstibine gas, a lovely little toxin that turns your bedroom into a gas chamber. Even Napoleon Bonaparte might have been taken out by his wallpaper while in exile. His bathroom on Street Helena was covered in the stuff. You think your IKEA furniture is killing you because the instructions are in Swedish and you have 3 leftover screws, but Victorian homeowners were literally breathing in poison just to flex on their neighbors. It turns out, to die for decor used to be a literal description rather than a fashion statement. Your house wasn't haunted, it was just heavily metallic and very, very grumpy. Number 3. The town that danced to death. Picture a busy street in 16th century Strasbourg. A woman named Frau Trophea walks out of her house and starts dancing. Not a just won the lottery jig or a my favorite song is on sway, we're talking a frantic, limb-flailing, sweat-drenched marathon. She doesn't stop for food. She doesn't stop for sleep. Within a week, 30 more people join her. Within a month, 400 people are convulsing in the streets, like a medieval rave that has gone horribly off the rails. For centuries, this dancing plague of 1,518 was treated like a weird folk legend or a religious parable about the dangers of sin. But it actually happened. It's one of the most well-documented cases of mass psychogenic illness in history. Local authorities, in their infinite wisdom, decided the cure for too much dancing was, you guessed it, more dancing. They built a stage and hired musicians to keep the rhythm going, which is basically like trying to put out a grease fire with a flamethrower. People's hearts eventually gave out, their feet bled, and they collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Modern science thinks it might have been ergot poisoning, a fungus on rye that acts like a primitive version of LSD, or just the psychological stress of famine and plague boiling over into a collective brain snap. Either way, it's a terrifying reminder that your brain is a social creature that can occasionally decide to delete your survival instinct file and replace it with a compulsory desire to boogie until you explode. Number 2. The Fatal Premonition of Morgan Robertson. If you wrote a book about a massive, unsinkable luxury ocean liner that hits an iceberg in the North Atlantic during its maiden voyage in April and sinks because there weren't enough lifeboats, people would call you a hack. They'd say you're just plagiarizing the Titanic. The only problem is that Morgan Robertson wrote this exact story in his novella, The Wreck of the Titan, in 1898, 14 years before the Titanic actually sank. For years, people treated this as a spooky glitch in the Matrix, or proof that Robertson was a time traveler who really sucked at picking a more profitable era to visit. The parallels are genuinely unsettling. His fictional ship was called the Titan. The real one was the Titanic. Both were roughly 800 feet long. Both could carry about 3,000 people. Both hit an iceberg on the starboard side. Both sank in April. While Robertson later claimed he just knew a lot about shipbuilding and maritime trends, the sheer density of the coincidences makes the "it's just a myth" crowd very uncomfortable. It's the ultimate "I told you so," except the person saying it wrote it in a bargain bin fiction book over a decade before the tragedy. Your brain desperately wants to find a logical pattern to protect you from the chaos of the universe, but sometimes the universe just hands a random writer the script for the future and tells him to publish it as a 10-cent paperback. Number 1. The Brain-Eating Amoeba. For a long time, the idea of a microscopic monster that crawls up your nose and eats your memories for breakfast was relegated to bad sci-fi movies and internet creepypastas. Parents used to tell their kids not to jump into stagnant pond water, mostly because of leeches or snapping turtles. The brain-eating part sounded like something your older brother made up to keep you out of his secret swimming hole. Unfortunately, Naegleria fowleri is very real, very hungry, and very much living in warm freshwater lakes and rivers. If you jump into a lake and water gets forced up your nose, this little single-celled jerk can hitch a ride along your olfactory nerve directly into your frontal lobe. Once it's there, it doesn't just hang out, it starts consuming brain tissue, causing a primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. While it's incredibly rare, it's also incredibly lethal. We're talking a 97% fatality rate. It's the ultimate, nature is terrifying reality check. You think you're at the top of the food chain because you have a smartphone and a retirement plan, but you can be taken down by a literal blob that doesn't even have a nervous system. It's basically the universe reminding you that your brain is technically a delicacy, and sometimes you're just providing the delivery service. The dark truth behind normal childhood rules. Number 10. The vitamin C cold cure. You feel a tickle in your throat and immediately start chugging orange-flavored effervescent tablets like they're the elixir of life. The rule that vitamin C prevents or cures the common cold was largely popularized by Linus Pauling, a brilliant chemist who became strangely obsessed with high-dose vitamins despite a total lack of clinical evidence. The supplement industry took his Nobel Prize-winning reputation and used it to build a multi-billion-dollar empire. While your body needs vitamin C, flooding your system with 20 times your daily value doesn't kill a virus, it just gives you very expensive, neon-colored urine. It's a placebo effect wrapped in a health mandate, making you feel productive while your immune system does all the actual work for free. Number 9. The Tylenol for every ache, reflex. You have a slight headache probably because you haven't looked at a blade of grass in 3 days and your first instinct is to reach for a pill bottle. We've been conditioned to believe that any minor physical discomfort is a biological error that must be corrected with chemistry. This rule of instant relief was built on aggressive 1950s marketing that pathologized normal human existence. By framing every sneeze or stiff neck as a condition requiring a purchase, the pharmaceutical industry turned your medicine cabinet into a subscription service for wellness. Your nervous system is trying to tell you something, but Big Pharma would rather you just hit the mute button with a tablet. Number 8. The healthy granola bar illusion. Imagine grabbing a snack that looks like a compressed brick of birdseed and feeling like a fitness influencer, even though you're essentially eating a candy bar that went to private school. The rule that granola is the ultimate health food was born out of the 1960s counterculture movement, but it was perfected by corporate food giants who realized they could charge triple for oats if they added enough corn syrup to glue them together. They've marketed the texture of health crunchy, earthy, and brown to distract you from the fact that most bars have more sugar than a glazed donut. Your brain sees whole grains and ignores the nutritional disaster happening underneath the wrapper. It's a psychological sleight of hand that lets you satisfy your sweet tooth while maintaining your wellness ego. Number 7. The spinach superpower. If you grew up thinking a can of slimy green leaves would instantly transform your biceps into bowling balls, you've been the victim of a very old, very accidental mathematical error and a very intentional marketing pivot. Back in the day, a scientist misplaced a decimal point, making it look like spinach had 10 times more iron than it actually does. Instead of correcting the record, the industry leaned into the myth, creating a pipe-smoking sailor to bully children into eating a specific brand of canned greens. It's one of the first instances of superfood branding, using a fictional character to create a rule that health is something you can find at the bottom of a tin can. Your childhood belief in Popeye wasn't just a cartoon preference, it was a successful attempt to make a low-value crop the MVP of your dinner table. Number 6. The fluoride flavor profile. You've been told since birth that toothpaste needs to have that sharp, stinging mint flavor to feel clean. But here's the kicker. The mint doesn't actually do anything for your teeth. It was added to Pepsodent in the early 20th century specifically to create a tingle that tells your brain, hey, something is happening. Before this, people didn't really brush their teeth because it was a boring chore with no immediate feedback. By adding a mild irritant like mint oil, companies created a sensory reward system. You didn't start brushing for hygiene. You started because you became addicted to the cooling sensation in your mouth. It's a psychological rule that cleanliness must be painful or intense to be effective. Your bathroom routine is less about dental health and more about a century-old habit loop designed to make you crave a specific chemical burn every morning. Number 5. The lather, rinse, repeat loop. You're in the shower, scrubbing your scalp with enough intensity to peel a potato, and you see those 3 little words on the back of the bottle: lather, rinse, repeat. It sounds like sound medical advice, right? Wrong. It's actually a masterclass in doubling a company's revenue without inventing a single new product. Unless you've spent the last 48 hours rolling in a vat of industrial grease, your hair is usually clean after the first pass. But by adding that one extra word, repeat, shampoo, manufacturers effectively tricked the entire world into using twice as much product as necessary. It's a psychological nudge that plays on your desire for squeaky clean perfection, even though squeaky is actually the sound of your hair's natural oils screaming in agony as they're stripped away for the second time in 3 minutes. You aren't cleaning your hair, you're just paying for the privilege of running out of soap faster. Number 4. The back-to-school New Year. There is no biological reason why you need a brand new wardrobe and a fresh set of 32 scented markers just because the earth has tilted slightly away from the sun. The back-to-school season is a manufactured holiday created by retailers to bridge the gap between summer slumping and winter gorging. They've successfully convinced generations of parents and children that a fresh start is something you buy, rather than something you do. You're conditioned to believe that your old backpack, which is perfectly functional and only smells slightly of forgotten ham, is a social death sentence. It's a rule that turns education into a fashion show and forces your parents to subsidize the office supply industry under the guise of preparedness. Basically, your academic success is being held hostage by the vibrant colors of a fresh trapper keeper. Number 3. The white wedding dress code. Imagine feeling like a social pariah because you didn't spend the equivalent of a down payment on a house for a dress you'll wear exactly once before vacuum sealing it in your attic. Before Queen Victoria decided to wear white in 1840, people just wore their best Sunday clothes, usually blue, black, or red. But the textile industry saw an opportunity to turn bridal into a specialized, high-cost category. They marketed the white dress as a symbol of purity and status, mostly because, in the 19th century, keeping a white dress clean was a subtle flex that you were rich enough not to do manual labor. Now, your brain is hardwired to believe that your marriage isn't legally binding unless you look like a giant, expensive marshmallow. It's a rule designed to make sure the garment industry gets its cut of your happily ever after. Number 2. The drink your juice mandate. You probably grew up thinking a glass of orange juice was a concentrated burst of health, but your liver sees it as a concentrated burst of metabolic chaos. The orange juice for breakfast rule was a desperate pivot by the Florida Citrus Exchange in the early 20th century because they had a massive surplus of oranges and no one to eat them. They didn't just sell fruit. They sold the idea that liquid sugar is a morning essential. Your brain thinks you're being a health-conscious adult, but you're really just drinking a soda that's been clever enough to wear a natural costume. Basically, the citrus lobby convinced us that fruit-flavored water with 30 grams of sugar is a responsible way to start the day. Number 1. The best before panic. You're standing in front of your fridge, staring intensely at a carton of milk. The date says it expired 10 minutes ago, even though it smells like, well, milk. You pour it down the drain like it's liquid plutonium. That best before date isn't a scientific calculation of when the food becomes toxic. It's often just a manufacturer's best guess at when the crackers might lose their peak snap. We've been trained to treat these dates as hard biological deadlines because, surprise, if you throw away perfectly good food because a stamp told you to, you have to go buy more food. It's a rule designed to exploit your fear of accidental self-poisoning to keep inventory moving. Your kitchen is essentially a graveyard of misunderstood timestamps, and the grocery store is the only one attending the funeral with a smile. The short-term solutions that became permanent. Number 20. The emergency Wi-Fi name. When you moved in, the router came with a default name like ARRISG 825G and a password that looks like a cat walked across a numpad. You wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge, promising yourself you'd change it to something clever like FBI surveillance van once you got settled. It has been 2 years. Every time a friend asks for the Wi-Fi, you have to perform a ritualistic pilgrimage to the kitchen to read off a string of alphanumeric gibberish. You've memorized the code, but you refuse to change the name because the setup portal is confusing. You've traded your digital identity for a string of random characters, effectively telling the neighborhood that you have the technical ambition of a Victorian chimney sweep. Number 19. The Just This Once floor lamp. One of your overhead lights flickered out, and instead of buying a ladder and a bulb, you dragged a dusty floor lamp from the garage and plugged it into the corner. It casts a weird, interrogation room shadow across the ceiling, and the cord is a literal tripwire across the hardwood. You told yourself it was a 2-4-hour solution. Now, that lamp is the primary light source of your living room. You've even started liking the moody vibe it creates, mostly because your brain has opted to find aesthetic value in your refusal to change a light bulb. You aren't living in a cozy apartment. You're living in a cave illuminated by a $15 piece of plastic from 2008. Number 18. The temporary desktop background. You downloaded a high-res image of a literal potato or a blurry screenshot of a spreadsheet because you needed to test your monitor's resolution for 5 seconds. "I'll put my cool cyberpunk landscape back on in a minute," you whispered. That was during the Obama administration. Now, every time you minimize your windows, you are greeted by the same starchy vegetable or a haunting reminder of Q3 expenses from 2016. Your brain has integrated this visual nightmare into your baseline reality. You don't even see the potato anymore. It's just the color of your computer. You've successfully habituated to a joke that isn't funny anymore, proving that your soul is willing to accept a life of aesthetic bankruptcy if it means avoiding 3 clicks in the settings menu. Number 17. The provisional kitchen hack. Your can opener snapped in half, so you started using a screwdriver and a hammer to get into your soup. It was an emergency measure because you were hungry and the stores were closed. But then, you realized you're actually pretty good at it. Now, your kitchen drawer contains a designated soup hammer. You've turned a basic culinary task into a medieval construction project every single lunchtime. You tell guests, it's a rustic technique, but your brain knows the truth. You're just too stubborn to spend $8 on a piece of rotating metal. You have officially chosen violence over convenience, and your pantry now looks like a crime scene where the primary victim was a tin of chickpeas. Number 16. The just for this trip suitcase. You came back from a vacation 3 weeks ago and, instead of unpacking, you just started living out of the suitcase on the floor. I'll do the laundry on Sunday, you promised. But then Sunday happened, and you only needed one pair of socks, so you fished them out. Now, the suitcase is your dresser. Your actual dresser is empty, or perhaps filled with things you don't use, while your daily wardrobe is a chaotic heap of polyester in a nylon zip-up bag. You've turned your bedroom into a permanent departure lounge. Your brain thinks you're still on the go, which is a hilarious lie considering the furthest you've traveled lately is from the couch to the fridge. You aren't unpacked. You're just a squatter in your own bedroom. Number 15. The temporary subscription. You signed up for a 7-day free trial of a niche streaming service just to watch one documentary about competitive dog grooming. You told yourself you'd cancel it immediately. You are now in month 42 of that subscription. You've paid roughly $400 to a company you don't like, for content you don't watch, all because the cancel membership button is hidden behind 3 submenus, and your brain decided that losing $9.99 a month is a convenience fee for not having to think. You've basically adopted a very small, very useless digital pet that eats your bank account. It's the ultimate short-term solution to, I want to see this one thing, that became a permanent tax on your procrastination. Number 14. The emergency chair pile. We've all been there. It's 11 at night, you're exhausted, and hanging up your laundry feels like scaling Everest without oxygen. You tell yourself, I'll just toss these jeans on the guest chair for tonight. It's a temporary staging area, a brief layover on the journey to the closet. Except, by Tuesday, those jeans have invited a hoodie to the party. By Friday, the chair has vanished entirely, replaced by a structural mound of fabric that has its own ecosystem. You've effectively outsourced your wardrobe to a piece of furniture meant for sitting. Your brain eventually stops seeing clutter and starts seeing custom upholstery made of cotton blends. You've traded your dignity for 30 seconds of saved effort, and now you're basically living in a high-stakes game of Tetris where the prize is a wrinkled shirt and a sense of profound personal failure. Number 13. The charging cable yoga. Your phone charger has developed a mysterious kink near the base, and the only way it actually transfers electricity is if you loop it around a bedpost, weight it down with a heavy book, and pray to the gods of copper wiring. It started as a just for now fix while you waited to order a new one on Amazon. That was 8 months ago. Now, your nightly ritual involves 10 minutes of delicate structural engineering just to get that little green lightning bolt to appear. You've memorized the exact 4-2-degree angle required for conductivity, and you live in constant fear of a draft knocking the book over. Your nervous system has integrated this stress into your sleep hygiene. Instead of spending $10 on a new cable, you've chosen to turn every evening into a bomb disposal simulation. Your brain is convinced this is efficiency, but your frayed nerves would like a word. Number 12. The temporary keyboard fix. You're typing away on your laptop when suddenly the E key decides to enter early retirement. Instead of doing the adult thing and taking it to a repair shop, you decide to use an external mechanical keyboard that sounds like a hailstorm hitting a tin roof. You tell yourself it's just for the afternoon. Fast forward 3 years, your laptop is buried under a mountain of adapters, the screen is propped up by a stack of old coasters, and you've essentially built a desktop computer out of the corpse of a portable device. Your brain has successfully remapped your entire workspace around a failure because clicking buy now on a replacement part felt like too much commitment. It's the psychological equivalent of wearing a cast on your leg for a decade because you didn't feel like driving to the hospital to get it removed. You aren't fixing the problem, you're just colonizing the wreckage. Number 11. The just for now wall lean. You bought a framed poster or a mirror, but the thought of finding a stud finder and a level felt like a weekend project for a version of you that actually has their life together. So, you leaned it against the wall. I'll hang it properly tomorrow, you said, leaning it at a precarious 7-5-degree angle. That mirror has now lived on the floor so long it has its own dust bunny colony behind it. You've adjusted your walking path to avoid kicking it, and you've even started checking your outfit while crouching like a gremlin. Your brain has accepted that leaning is a valid architectural choice. You aren't decorating a home. You're staging a perpetual moving-in day that will only end when the lease does. Scientists just discovered something that changes everything. Number 11. The gut's second job. You've probably heard that your gut is your second brain, which sounds like a cute marketing slogan for expensive yogurt until you realize it's actually running a secret shadow government. Scientists used to think the gut-brain axis was a one-way street, where the brain shouted orders and the stomach just grumbled in protest. New research shows that your gut bacteria are actually hacking your vagus nerve to send fake signals to your head. They can literally trigger cravings for specific junk foods because they want the sugar, not you. You aren't actually hungry for that questionable 2 in the morning burrito. You're just being piloted like a giant, fleshy mecha suit by a colony of microscopic yeast that has zero regard for your beach body or your dignity. Number 10. The heart's memory. If you've ever felt a gut feeling in your chest, it turns out your heart might actually be thinking for itself. We used to believe the heart was just a glorified muscular pump, a biological bellows keeping the pipes pressurized. But researchers have discovered that the heart contains an intricate network of roughly 40,000 neurons, essentially a little brain. This intrinsic cardiac nervous system can operate independently of the brain. In your skull, learning, feeling, and even making short-term decisions about your cardiovascular health. Your heart isn't just reacting to your emotions, it's participating in them. So when you say your heart isn't in it, you might be making a scientifically accurate statement about your chest brain's current mood. Number 9. The bone hormone. Most of us think of our skeleton as a dusty set of structural beams, basically just there to keep us from collapsing into a puddle of organs on the floor. But scientists recently realized your bones are actually a massive endocrine gland. They produce a hormone called osteocalcin, which acts like a biological go signal for the rest of your body. It tells your brain to remember things, your muscles to use energy, and even regulates your fight or flight response. When you get scared, it's not just adrenaline. Your bones are literally dumping chemicals into your blood to tell you to run. You aren't just a ghost piloting a meat suit, you're a ghost piloting a very chatty, very chemical skeleton. Number 8. Muscle memory is literal. We've always used the term muscle memory to describe why you can still ride a bike after 10 years of sitting on the couch, but we thought the memory part was stored safely in your head. Science just pulled a fast one on us. Your actual muscle cells have a physical memory of being fit. When you work out, your muscle fibers gain new nuclei. Even if you stop exercising and your muscles shrink back down to pool noodle status, those extra nuclei don't disappear, they just go into sleep mode. The moment you start lifting again, they wake up and fast-track your gains. Your biceps are basically keeping receipts of every gym session you've ever had, just in case you decide to stop being a professional couch potato. Number 7. Your skin sees light. We generally assume that eyes have a monopoly on vision, but it turns out your skin is a bit of a voyeur. Researchers found that human skin contains opsins, the same light-sensitive proteins found in your retinas. While your skin isn't seeing pictures of the world, it is detecting UV radiation and blue light independently of your eyes. Your skin can literally see when it's being exposed to the sun and starts the tanning process as a defensive reaction before your brain even realizes you forgot the sunscreen. You are essentially a giant, walking eyeball that just happens to be covered in hair and bad tattoos. Number 6. The ghost of your cravings. We used to think that when you lose weight, the fat burns up like fuel in a furnace. But physics says matter can't just vanish, and neither does your fat. Scientists have pointed out that when you lose weight, you are actually exhaling it. Your fat breaks down into water and carbon dioxide. The water leaves through your sweat and pee, but the vast majority of that weight leaves through your lungs. You are literally breathing your former self out into the atmosphere. Every time you exhale at the gym, you're tossing a tiny piece of your unwanted cargo into the air for someone else to walk through. You aren't just getting fit, you're evaporating. Number 5. The nostril shift. You probably think you're breathing through both nostrils right now, but your nose is actually a liar. Every few hours, your autonomic nervous system engages in something called the nasal cycle. It swells the tissue in one nostril to partially block it, forcing the other one to do all the heavy lifting. Then it switches sides like a relay race. This happens so your smell receptors can take turns resting and staying moist, and because some smells are actually easier to detect in slow-moving air versus fast-moving air. Your nose is basically a sophisticated air filtration system that operates on a strict union-mandated break schedule. Number 4. Water has a twist. You'd think we'd have H2O figured out by now, considering we're mostly made of the stuff. But water just threw a curveball. Researchers recently discovered that at certain temperatures, liquid water actually exists in two distinct phases, at the same time, one high density and one low density. They don't mix, like oil and vinegar, but they are both just water. This means water is essentially two different liquids pretending to be one. It's the ultimate "it's complicated" relationship. This tiny molecular quirk is likely the reason water behaves so weirdly compared to every other liquid on Earth. Your refreshing glass of ice water is actually a chaotic structural civil war happening at a molecular level. Number 3. Trees are socialists. Forests aren't just a collection of individual trees competing for sunlight. They are a massive, underground communist collective. Scientists recently mapped the Wood Wide Web, a complex fungal network that connects the roots of different tree species. Through this system, trees actually trade resources. If one tree is stuck in the shade and starving, its neighbors will literally pump excess sugar and nutrients through the fungus to keep it alive. They even send chemical warnings about pests to their buddies miles away. The forest is less like a silent park and more like a high-speed fiber optic network where everyone is sharing the Wi-Fi. Basically, the plants in your backyard are better at community organizing than your neighborhood's HOA. Number 2. The Earth's hum. If you've ever sat in total silence and felt a weird, low-frequency vibration that seemed to vibrate your very soul, you aren't going crazy, the planet is just humming at you. Scientists have finally confirmed that the Earth emits a constant, low-frequency, microseismic hum caused by the literal pounding of ocean waves against the seafloor. It's a sound that is too low for your ears to hear, but your body can absolutely feel it. This hum is constant, all the time, and it changes based on the weather. You spend your entire life vibrating in harmony with the Pacific Ocean's latest temper tantrum. It's less of a oneness with nature and more of a the floor is a giant, wet subwoofer situation. Number 1. The lithium leak. Imagine waking up and realizing your brain is basically a high-maintenance smartphone that requires a very specific mineral just to keep from deleting your childhood memories. For decades, we thought lithium was just something doctors gave people to stabilize their moods, or what goes into the battery that you definitely shouldn't lick. But scientists just discovered that lithium occurs naturally in your brain. Not only is it there, but it's actually acting like a tiny, chemical bodyguard for your neurons. If your brain starts running low on this brain juice, it's one of the earliest signs of Alzheimer's. Essentially, your cognitive health isn't just about crosswords and kale, it's about making sure your internal battery isn't leaking. If you feel a bit foggy today, maybe you're just a few micrograms short of a full charge. New science discoveries that broke everything we thought we knew. Number 14. The water memory glitch. Imagine standing at your kitchen sink and realizing the water you're about to drink has a mood. For the longest time, we assumed water was just a simple H2O molecule, boring, predictable, and great for hydration. However, new studies into the molecular structure of water suggest it can actually retain memory of the substances it once touched through complex hydrogen bonding networks. It's like the liquid version of a digital hard drive. This means the glass of water on your nightstand might still be vibing from a chemical encounter it had 3 cities ago. Essentially, the fundamental building block of life is way more woo-woo than your high school chemistry teacher ever dared to admit. Number 13. The lung butt loophole. Some people think the peak of medical science is a fancy pill or a laser, but in 2025, we officially proved that mammals can breathe through their butts. It's called enteral ventilation. Researchers found that if you're struggling for oxygen, a specific liquid called perfluorodecalan delivered, well, backwards, can actually keep you alive. It turns out your intestines are basically a backup pair of lungs that nobody bothered to read the manual for. So, the next time you're gasping for air, just remember, your body has a plan B that is as medically effective as it is socially devastating. Number 12. The heart's secret brain. Most people think of the heart as a glorified, fleshy sump pump that just pushes blood around whenever you see a scary movie or run for the bus. But researchers have identified about 40,000 neurons living right there in your chest, known as the little brain in the heart. These neurons can sense, feel, and remember things independently of the gray matter in your skull. It turns out the heart doesn't just take orders from the brain, it argues back. When you have a gut feeling or a heartfelt reaction, it's not just poetry, it's your secondary processor sending a memo to the main office. Your chest is basically running its own rogue AI program without your permission. Number 11. The shadow biosphere. Scientists have spent decades looking for aliens in deep space, but we just realized there might be aliens living in our own dirt. There's a theory of a shadow biosphere where microorganisms exist that have a completely different biochemical makeup than any other life on Earth, using arsenic instead of phosphorus, for example. We've been so busy looking for little green men on Mars that we completely ignored the fact that Earth might be hosting an entirely different version of life that doesn't even play by our rules. Number 10. The bone radio. You probably think your skeleton is just a silent scaffolding system designed to carry your meat around, but it's actually a broadcasting station. Scientists discovered that your bones produce a hormone called osteocalcin, which acts as a chemical messenger to tell your brain to stop being stressed or to help you remember where you left your keys. If your bones aren't talking, your brain starts to glitch. Essentially, your skeleton isn't just a cage for your organs. It's a chatty roommate that's secretly managing your mental health while you're busy worrying about what you posted on Instagram. Number 9. The sleep cleaning car wash. Every night when you drift off, your brain doesn't just turn off, it literally opens the floodgates. The glymphatic system is a recently discovered waste clearance pathway that pumps cerebrospinal fluid through your brain tissue to wash away molecular trash like beta amyloid. It's a literal power wash for your thoughts. Without this nightly rinse, your brain becomes a hoarding situation for toxic proteins. You aren't just resting when you sleep, you're deep cleaning the motherboard so it doesn't overheat and melt the next morning. Number 8. The hybrid human. For a long time, we thought Homo sapiens were the winners of evolution, who just outcompeted the Neanderthals until they disappeared. But DNA sequencing just proved we didn't beat them, we merged with them. Most people carry about 2% Neanderthal DNA, which influences everything from your immune system to your hair texture and how you handle altitude. You aren't a pure species. You're a walking, talking evolutionary smoothie. You're basically a reboot of an older model that still has some of the original bugs in the software. Number 7. The fossilized soft tissue. The scientific consensus used to be rock solid. If you die and turn into a fossil, your soft bits, veins, cells, and skin are gone in a few thousand years, leaving only the hard stones behind. Then, some cheeky researchers cracked open a Tyrannosaurus rex bone and found actual, flexible blood vessels and intact proteins. This shouldn't be possible. It's the biological equivalent of finding a fresh ham sandwich inside a sealed tomb from ancient Egypt. It broke our understanding of how long organic molecules can survive, proving that the fossil record isn't just a bunch of rocks. It's a giant, prehistoric biological freezer that we forgot to plug in. Number 6. The infinite human cloud. We used to think the human memory had a cap, like a cheap thumb drive you bought at a gas station. But new neurological modeling suggests the human brain's storage capacity is closer to a petabyte that's enough to hold the entire internet. The reason you can't remember what you had for lunch yesterday isn't a space issue, it's a filing issue. Your brain is a supercomputer with the world's worst organizational system, meaning you have the hardware of a god and the search function of a pre-Google library catalog. Number 5. The plant intelligence problem. You probably think of your houseplants as decorative green blobs that exist solely to die the moment you go on vacation, but science just pulled the rug out from under that smug sense of superiority. Researchers have discovered that plants don't just react, they remember, they learn, and they even scream. When a tomato plant gets thirsty or has a stem cut, it emits ultrasonic clicks that sound like tiny bubble wrap popping. Since they don't have ears, they use their entire bodies to sense vibrations, essentially turning every leaf into a microphone. We used to think intelligence required a brain, but it turns out you've been living in a house full of silent, judgmental witnesses that are technically talking behind your back. Number 4. The gravity-defying tree. You'd think we'd have the how do trees work thing figured out by now, but for a long time, the math just didn't add up. To get water from the dirt to the top of a 90 meters redwood, you'd need a pump system more powerful than anything nature should be able to build. Standard physics says you can't suck water up a straw higher than about 10 meters before gravity wins, but trees do it anyway by putting water under negative pressure. essentially stretching the liquid into a high-tension rope that pulls itself upward. It's a physical impossibility that happens in your backyard every day. The trees are literally breaking the laws of suction because they simply don't have time for your physics. Number 3. The body's hidden organ. For centuries, we thought we had mapped every inch of the human body. But in 2018, we stumbled upon a massive, body-wide organ called the interstitium that we'd somehow missed the entire time. It's a network of fluid-filled cavities found everywhere under your skin, lining your lungs, and wrapping around your muscles. We didn't see it because our old way of looking at tissue involved draining the fluid, which caused the whole structure to collapse like a popped balloon. It's essentially a shock absorber system that connects everything, meaning your body isn't a collection of separate parts. It's one giant, soggy sponge. We've been studying the map of the human body for 2,000 years and just realized we missed a whole continent. Number 2. The solar-powered skin. It turns out humans might have more in common with a succulent than we care to admit. While we don't do full-on photosynthesis, we recently found that our bodies have light-sensitive receptors in places that never see the sun, like our blood vessels. Some researchers suggest we can actually harvest a small amount of energy directly from sunlight to help regulate our metabolism. You aren't just getting a tan, you're technically plugging yourself into the giant fusion reactor in the sky to top off your batteries. Number 1. The accidental compass. You might think you need a GPS to find the nearest Taco Bell, but your eyes actually contain a protein called cryptochrome that is sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. Birds use it to migrate, but humans have the exact same hardware tucked away in our retinas. We've spent thousands of years getting lost on road trips while our eyeballs were quietly screaming, "South is that way, you idiot!" We have a built-in magnetic compass that we've basically ignored because we're too busy staring at TikTok. 10 everyday products with shockingly dark origins. Number 10. Hair dye of doom. Today, dyeing your hair is just self-expression, but in the 19th century, it was practically a chemical experiment with your scalp as the test subject. Early hair dyes used lead acetate, yes, more lead, which could cause everything from hair loss to paralysis. There were also dyes made with silver nitrate, mercury, and even sulfur compounds that left your hair smelling like rotten eggs. People wanted to look youthful and vibrant instead. They were slow cooking their follicles in poison. It wasn't until the early 20th century that safer dyes were developed by a French chemist who accidentally discovered paraphenylenediamine while trying to make a new kind of fabric dye. So technically, your hair color today exists thanks to a lab accident and a long history of chemical suffering. Every time you touch up your roots, you're participating in a century-old science experiment that just happens to look fabulous. Number 9. Perfume and plague. Perfume smells classy now, but its origins are grim. During the Black Death in medieval Europe, people thought disease came from miasma, basically, evil smells. So to protect themselves, they soaked in perfumes, carried scented pouches, and burned incense non-stop. Spoiler, none of it worked. What they didn't realize was that the perfume wasn't protecting them from the plague, it was just covering the stench of decay. But the habit stuck. Over centuries, perfume evolved from death repellent to luxury statement, and, even today, some of the most famous fragrances use animal-derived ingredients like ambergris from whale intestines and civet musk from, civet glands. So yes, your favorite scent might trace back to whale guts and medieval pest control, but hey, at least you smell historically fabulous. Number 8. Cocaine toothache drops. If you've ever had a toothache, you probably reached for ibuprofen or a dentist, but if you lived in the year 1885, you might have reached for something stronger: cocaine. That's right. Back then, cocaine wasn't just legal, it was basically the aspirin of the era. You could walk into a pharmacy and grab a bottle of cocaine toothache drops, specially made for kids. Advertisements literally featured smiling children holding the bottle like, "Yay, my mouth doesn't hurt and I can see colors now." The stuff numbed pain, boosted mood, and destroyed lives in equal measure. Cocaine was so popular it even showed up in the original formula for Coca-Cola. Eventually, doctors realized, maybe giving narcotics to toddlers isn't the best idea. And the world sobered up, sort of. But the next time someone says they don't make medicine like they used to, just remember, yeah, thank God they don't. Number 7. Toilet paper trials. It's soft, white, and always missing when you need it, but toilet paper's history is rough. Before modern rolls, people used everything from corn cobs to seashells to, communal sponges. The ancient Romans had a stick with a sponge on the end, shared by everyone in the public bathhouse. You'd rinse it in vinegar water, then pass it on. In China, the first paper for wiping appeared around the 6th century, but it was only for the royal family. Imagine working your whole life just to make toilet paper for the emperor's butt. Western countries didn't catch on until the late 19th century, and even then, people thought it was a luxury product. So next time you complain about cheap toilet paper, remember at least it's not a used sponge from ancient Rome. Number 6. Blood in the beauty jar. Long before vampire facials became a thing, people were literally putting blood on their faces, sometimes their own, sometimes not. Ancient Romans used gladiator blood as a youth elixir, while in the Elizabethan era, nobles used mercury and arsenic-based powders to get that pale, deathly glow. And today, we're not that different. From leech therapy to microneedling, we still use pain and blood as ingredients for beauty. It's like humanity collectively decided that glowing skin must involve mild suffering. So the next time you apply your luxury serum, just remember, it's the latest chapter in a 2,000-year-long horror story about vanity and very questionable skincare science. Number 5. Lipstick of the dead. You know that bright red lipstick that makes you feel like a confident main character? Yeah, it used to be made with crushed insects and toxic metals. In ancient Egypt, Cleopatra reportedly rocked a lipstick blend of carmine beetles and fish scales because nothing says royalty like smearing dead bugs on your face. Fast forward to the early 20th century, and companies started swapping bugs for lead. Yes, lead. The same stuff in old paint and poisonous pipes. Women in the year 1920 weren't just chasing glamour, they were slowly poisoning themselves for it. Lead-based lipstick could cause fatigue, headaches, and, in extreme cases, neurological damage. But who cares, right? Your lips looked divine while your nervous system screamed in the background. Eventually, regulations kicked in, and lipstick got slightly less lethal. But it's still a descendant of a centuries-long toxic love affair with beauty proof that humans will risk death if it means a little extra shimmer. Number 4. High heels of pain. You might think high heels were invented to make legs look good, but their story starts with men, horses, and blood. In the 15th century, Persian cavalry soldiers wore heels to keep their feet locked in stirrups while shooting arrows mid-gallop. The higher the heel, the deadlier the aim. Eventually, European aristocrats saw this and thought, that looks powerful. So men started wearing heels to show off their wealth and dominance. Then women adopted the style because, of course, everything deadly eventually becomes fashionable. By the 18th century, heels were symbols of status, luxury, and totally wrecked ankles. Over time, they went from battlefield gear to ballroom torture devices, turning posture, gait, and spinal alignment into collateral damage for beauty. So next time someone says, pain is beauty, you can remind them that, technically, pain was also warfare. Number 3. Umbrellas of the dead. Nothing sinister about staying dry, right? Well, in ancient Egypt and China, umbrellas weren't for rain, they were for status. Ordinary folks baked in the sun, while the elite hid under ornate parasols, often made from peacock feathers or oiled paper. Basically, early umbrellas said, I'm rich, you're not, stay damp. Then came the darker twist. Some ceremonial umbrellas were decorated with animal hides, bones, or human hair, symbolizing divine protection or ancestral power. In some cultures, carrying one indoors wasn't bad luck, it was a death omen. That superstition still echoes today when someone opens an umbrella inside and half the room gasps like you just summoned the Reaper. So yeah, that cute polka dot umbrella in your bag? It's the descendant of ancient sun shields for kings and ghosts. Number 2. The gas mask's grim debut. Gas masks look heroic in movies, but their origins are pure nightmare fuel. The first effective ones were developed during World War I, when poison gas attacks became a daily horror. Soldiers were literally melting in their trenches, lungs blistering from chlorine and mustard gas. Early masks were just urine-soaked rags. The ammonia helped neutralize some chemicals, but yeah, it smelled as bad as it sounds. Later, inventors created rubber-sealed masks with filters, saving thousands of lives. But they also became symbols of fear. Every child in Britain had to carry one during World War II, even toddlers. Cartoonists tried to make them look fun, but there's nothing fun about gas masks on playgrounds. So while the design saved humanity from choking to death, it also became one of history's creepiest reminders that progress often starts in panic. Number 1. The teddy bear of terror. A cute, cuddly teddy bear sounds innocent, right? Wrong. Its origin starts with a bear that didn't die. In the year 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt went on a hunting trip where his guides tied up a black bear for him to shoot, but Roosevelt refused, calling it unsportsmanlike. Newspapers loved it, toy makers loved it more, and soon Teddy's bear was born. But here's the dark twist. The real bear? It was later killed anyway by the hunting party. So while kids hugged their plush companions to sleep, the original teddy bear moment was more of a PR cover for a blood-soaked hunting trip. It's kind of poetic though, turning a symbol of violence into something soft and comforting. Basically, the teddy bear is what happens when guilt meets marketing. Stop avoiding these foods if you want to live longer. Number 9. The frozen food fright. You've probably spent years strolling past the freezer aisle with your nose in the air, convinced that anything encased in ice is a nutritional wasteland. You think fresh means a berry picked this morning, but unless you live inside a commercial greenhouse, that fresh blueberry has been sitting in a truck, a warehouse, and a fluorescent-lit shelf for 2 weeks, slowly bleeding vitamins like a popped balloon. Meanwhile, frozen fruits are picked at their absolute peak, and flash frozen faster than a politician changes their mind. This process locks in the nutrients, meaning that bag of frozen mango is often more nutritionally dense than the fresh one wilting in your fruit bowl. By avoiding frozen food to be a purist, you're just paying more money for fewer antioxidants and more food waste. Your body doesn't care if the raspberry was chilly 10 minutes ago, it just wants the anthocyanins. Number 8. The soy scare. For years, men have been terrified that eating a block of tofu will magically turn them into a different biological entity, thanks to the phytoestrogens in soy. You've probably heard that soy will mess with your hormones and ruin your gym gains. But here's the irony. Phytoestrogens are thousands of times weaker than actual human estrogen, and they can actually block the real, bad estrogens from docking in your cells. In reality, soy is a complete protein that's been linked to lower rates of prostate and breast cancer. Avoiding it because you're afraid of feminization is a scientific misunderstanding of epic proportions. You're skipping out on high-quality protein and heart-protecting isoflavones because you believed a meme from 2012. Basically, your muscles and your heart are suffering because of a chemical campfire story. Number 7. The garlic ghosting. If you're avoiding garlic because you're afraid of vampire breath or a slightly spicy stomach, you are officially sacrificing your immune system at the altar of social etiquette. Garlic isn't just a flavor enhancer, it's a biological weapon against high blood pressure and systemic inflammation. It contains allicin, a compound that's only created when you crush the clove. It's the plant's way of saying, "Don't eat me." But our bodies respond by making our arteries more flexible and our hearts more resilient. By skipping the garlic to stay polite, you're missing out on a natural antibiotic that's been used since the pyramids were built. You're choosing a slightly fresher-smelling mouth over a cardiovascular system that functions like a well-oiled machine. Basically, you're letting your dating life dictate your life expectancy, and your white blood cells are bored because of it. Number 6. The shellfish shaming. For a long time, we treated shrimp and lobster like they were the trash collectors of the ocean, filled with nothing but cholesterol and bad vibes. You might have been told to skip the prawns if you want to keep your heart from seizing up. In reality, shellfish are basically nature's multivitamins, packed with zinc, selenium, and B12 nutrients that most of us are desperately lacking. They contain astaxanthin, an antioxidant so powerful it makes your cells feel like they've just been to a luxury spa. Avoiding shellfish because you're worried about fat is a tragedy, considering they are almost pure protein and minerals. You're essentially turning down a biological upgrade because you're afraid of a sea creature that's 90% water and 10% pure health. Your thyroid is literally begging for the iodine you're leaving on the platter. Number 5. The mushroom mystery. Imagine being a fungus that can literally breathe, communicate through underground networks, and manufacture vitamin D from sunlight, only to be pushed off a plate because you're mushy. People avoid mushrooms because they think they're just garnish with no real value, but they are actually biological powerhouses. They contain beta-glucans, which are like a boot camp for your immune system, teaching your white blood cells how to hunt down pathogens, They are the only non-animal source of vitamin D in the produce aisle. By skipping them, you're missing out on a unique class of antioxidants that protect your brain from oxidative stress. Essentially, you're ignoring a natural pharmacy because you had one bad experience with a canned button mushroom in 1994. Number 4. The fruit sugar panic. You've probably seen some self-proclaimed wellness guru on TikTok holding a grape like it's a tiny purple vial of poison, claiming that the fructose in fruit is making you fat and inflamed. It's the ultimate smart-dumb argument. Yes, your liver processes fructose, but there is a massive difference between chugging a high-fructose corn syrup soda and eating an actual apple. When you eat fruit, the sugar is wrapped in a protective suit of fiber, vitamins, and polyphenols that tell your body to slow down and digest properly. By avoiding fruit to save your insulin, you're essentially boycotting the very antioxidants that keep your DNA from fraying like an old rope. Your brain runs on glucose, and your gut runs on fiber. Stopping yourself from eating a peach because of sugar is like refusing to put gas in your car because you're afraid of the liquid. You aren't avoiding a toxin. You're just depriving your cells of a natural multivitamin. Number 3. The red meat menace. Imagine being told for half a century that a steak is basically a ticking time bomb sitting on your dinner plate. You've probably spent years eyeing the ribeye with the same suspicion you'd give a suspicious suitcase left at an airport. But here's the plot twist. High-quality, unprocessed red meat is one of the most nutrient-dense substances on the planet. It's packed with vitamin B12, which keeps your nerves from fraying like a cheap charging cable, and bioavailable iron that actually lets your blood carry oxygen. While you were busy eating plant-based patties held together by industrial seed oils and chemical prayers, you were missing out on creatine and carnosine compounds that protect your brain from aging and keep your muscles from turning into decorative streamers. The real villain was never the cow. It was the sugary bun, the giant soda, and the deep-fried trans fats that usually tag along for the ride. Refusing a grass-fed steak to save your heart is like refusing to put gas in your car because you're afraid of the exhaust. Your body is a high-performance machine. Give it the iron it's screaming for. Number 2. Coffee jitters. If you've been trying to cleanse your system by swapping your morning cup of sanity for a lukewarm glass of lemon water, please stop. You aren't just tired. You're depriving your cells of a dark, caffeinated shield against the reaper. Contrary to the coffee stunts your growth propaganda your grandma fed you, coffee is actually a massive source of antioxidants in the Western diet, mostly because we don't eat enough vegetables, but we'll take what we can get. It's been linked to a lower risk of Parkinson's, type 2 diabetes, and even certain types of, I'd rather not have that, cancers. When you drink coffee, you aren't just vibrating at a frequency that allows you to see through time, you're bathing your liver in protective compounds. Ignoring coffee to be healthier is like refusing to wear a seatbelt because you're afraid it'll wrinkle your shirt. Your heart might be racing, but it's racing toward a longer life expectancy, probably so it can spend more money on lattes. Number 1. Chocolate guilt. If you've been denying yourself a square of dark chocolate because you think it's a cheat meal, you're technically committing a crime against your own longevity. We're not talking about the milk chocolate-covered sugar bars found in gas station aisles. We're talking about the bitter, dark stuff that makes your face scrunch up a little. Dark chocolate is loaded with flavonoids, which are basically tiny biological bodyguards that improve blood flow and lower blood pressure. It's one of the few foods that actually makes your blood vessels relax, which is a fancy way of saying it keeps you from turning into a walking tension headache. By avoiding it, you're missing out on a massive dose of magnesium, the chill-out mineral that helps you sleep and keeps your heart rhythm from sounding like a drum solo. Essentially, eating dark chocolate is a medical necessity disguised as a dessert. Disturbing body responses you mistake for normal. Number 7. The sneeze reflex lock. You feel it building. That telltale tickle in your nose, the tightening behind your eyes. A colossal sneeze is incoming. Then, right at the apex of the launch sequence, it vanishes. Just gone. You're left with the bizarre, frustrating sensation of having prepared for a bodily cataclysm that never arrived. This is the aborted sneeze, and it happens because your body's reflexes are constantly adjusting to maintain homeostasis. The sneeze reflex, a complex, rapid cascade of signals, is triggered when irritants hit the nasal mucosa. However, the initial signal is often brief, And if the irritant is removed or the threshold isn't maintained, the brain, specifically the respiratory center in the brainstem, hits the kill switch. Your body decided, halfway through the process, that the potential collateral damage wasn't worth the trouble. It's like your nervous system started to make a very dramatic announcement but decided halfway through that it was probably too much information for the room. You tried to launch a physiological missile, and your own internal command center issued a last-minute fail-safe, leaving you feeling high and dry. Number 6. The sudden dizzy spell. You spring up from the couch, maybe you heard the pizza delivery guy, maybe you just remembered that thing you were supposed to do 3 hours ago and suddenly the entire room tilts, the lights dim, and you experience a lovely moment of, oh no, am I about to pass out in front of my own refrigerator? This delightful little near-death experience is called orthostatic hypotension, and it's basically a brief but dramatic failure of your body's pressure-regulating system. When you're sitting or lying down, gravity is happily pooling a decent amount of your blood in your lower extremities. When you stand up rapidly, your circulatory system is supposed to immediately constrict the vessels in your legs and fire up your heart rate to ensure your brain gets its necessary blood and oxygen supply. Sometimes, your body's internal plumbing system is a little slow to respond to the shift, and your brain briefly runs on fumes. It's like your internal server went offline for 2 seconds because someone tripped over the power cord. It's a very polite reminder that your entire consciousness is critically dependent on a pressurized stream of fluid being continuously pumped uphill. Number 5. The hot-cold flash. You're sitting in an air-conditioned office, or perhaps standing outside on a mild day, and completely out of nowhere, you feel a sudden, intense wave of heat or cold wash over your body. It lasts only a moment, but it's so powerful it makes you physically shiver or sweat. If you're not menopausal, pregnant, or actively running a marathon, this is likely a tiny, unwarranted hypothalamic panic. Your hypothalamus is the tiny thermostat in your brain responsible for maintaining your core temperature. This organ is constantly receiving sensory data from your skin and circulatory system, and it makes micro-adjustments all day long. Sometimes, a rapid, albeit tiny, change in your blood flow or a transient emotional spike can trigger a quick misfire in this highly sensitive temperature-regulating center. It briefly shifts your perceived set point, initiating a rapid response vasodilation for heat or vasoconstriction and shivering for cold before immediately realizing its mistake and reverting to normal. It's your brain's thermal regulator having a tiny, dramatic existential crisis over a fraction of a degree. Number 4. The laughter spasm. You're not just laughing, you're crying. You're wheezing. Your core muscles feel like they're being pummeled by a tiny invisible boxer. Sometimes, a joke is so good, or a moment is so ridiculous, that your body literally enters a state of temporary paralysis. This isn't a heart attack, it's cataplexy brought on by strong emotion, a little psychological side effect that reminds you your brain is just one overly enthusiastic regulator away from disaster. What's happening is that the brain regions responsible for processing laughter, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, are getting a massive workout, and they are temporarily overwhelming the brainstem. Specifically, the strong emotional signal momentarily interferes with the production of orexin, or hypocretin, a neurotransmitter that helps regulate alertness and muscle tone. Suddenly, your brain decides that since you're having such a good time, maybe you don't need to stand up or hold your drink. Your knees buckle, your jaw hangs loose, and you become a delightful, helpless puddle of human. It's the ultimate paradox, a moment of peak happiness resulting in a temporary physical failure. The next time you collapse onto the floor in a fit of giggles, just know your brain momentarily decided to pull the plug on your musculoskeletal system because it thought the joke was that funny. Number 3. The eye floaters. You glance up at the blue sky or a bright white screen, and suddenly you see them. Little transparent worms, squiggles, or shadowy dots drifting lazily across your field of vision. No, you haven't developed a sudden fascination with microscopic space debris. These are eye floaters, and they are disturbingly normal. They are actually tiny bits of protein or cell debris floating in the vitreous humor, the clear, gel-like substance that fills the inside of your eyeball. When light enters your eye, these tiny fragments cast shadows on the retina, and what you see is the projection of those shadows. Because they are suspended in the gel, they lag slightly when you move your eye, which is why they appear to be swimming away whenever you try to look directly at them. The fact that you are walking around with little clumps of cellular trash in your eyeballs that you can actively see is a wonderful reminder of how cheaply constructed your visual system is. Number 2. Muscle twitches at rest. You're relaxing on the couch, contemplating the sheer perfection of your inactivity, when suddenly your eyelid starts vibrating like a hummingbird's wings, or a random bicep muscle starts doing the Macarena. These little, localized spasms are called fasciculations, and while they feel deeply unsettling, they are usually harmless. They are essentially a mini temper tantrum thrown by a single motor unit, a nerve, and the muscle fibers it controls. The causes are incredibly mundane. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep, electrolyte imbalances, or just plain old stress. When you're stressed, your sympathetic nervous system is on high alert, dumping stimulating hormones into your system, making those motor units overly sensitive and trigger-happy. It's your body's subtle way of letting you know you desperately need to drink more water and stop mainlining cold brew. Instead of sending a polite note, your nervous system opts for a rapid-fire, localized dance party on your face. Number 1. The déjà vu loop. You're in a new place, having a new conversation, but you have the unshakable, deeply uncanny feeling that you have been here before, said this exact line, and know exactly how the next 3 seconds will unfold. This is déjà vu French for already seen. And while it feels like a psychic time travel moment, it's probably a cognitive hiccup. The leading theory suggests it's a momentary wiring error between your brain's short-term and long-term memory circuits. Normally, new information passes to your short-term memory before being consciously encoded for long-term storage. In déjà vu, the new sensory input might bypass the short-term circuit and go straight into the long-term recognition circuit. Your brain processes the new moment as if it is being retrieved from memory, rather than experienced for the first time. The end result is a profound, but entirely false, sensation of recollection. Your memory system essentially jumped the queue, resulting in a brief moment where you mistakenly believe you are rereading your own life script. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.